Welcome back to Athletic Everyday, day number 158. I definitely don't need to say the day number anymore, but it's just part of the habit and the routine now. I know you guys could easily read it, but it would feel weird to say welcome back to Athletic Everyday without day number XYZ, whatever day it is, so I'm going to keep on doing it. Got a bounding session here for you today, guys. I was actually planning on doing some dunks after this bounding, but it got kind of late in the day, and my legs didn't really feel up to it. I felt like I could get the bounding in. Generally, I tend to find that bounding is a lot more posterior chain dominant, so like hamstrings, calves, a little bit of glutes, mainly the hamstrings, to be honest with you. You can think of it as a similar similar stimulus to sprinting, in that because you're having to propel yourself horizontally across the floor, you're going to be using those hamstrings to utilize that forward range of motion. You also get a little bit of hip flexor activation as well. In fact, I would say that probably the two prime dominant muscles that you'll use in sprinting and bounding are the hip flexors and the hamstrings, which is why you'll often find that people in field sports, they'll always bust a hamstring, or maybe they'll get a groin strain, or potentially even a hip flexor issue, because the sport requires you to move the leg through such speeds. I never used to understand why the hip flexors and the hamstrings were so utilized in running until I actually looked at the range of motion that both of those muscle groups have. So the hip flexors, when you're at the back end of the stride and you're getting that full extension on the hip, you're getting a really, really peak stretch on all of those hip flexor muscles. So the psoas major, psoas minor, the iliacus, all of those muscles that cross the hip joint that either insert into the spine or into the pelvis, and then also insert into the femur. All of those muscles are getting fully stretched, but then they're also having to contract concentrically and then pull the leg back in front of the body again. And the amount of force that's having to tolerate, and this is happening with the whole body throughout sprinting, but it's having to decelerate the leg and then re-accelerate it again. The peak forces on that muscle must be insane. There must be a ridiculous amount of tension. Same thing with the hamstring, just in reverse. So the muscle is pretty much in its shortest state at the end of the stride, when the leg is like in this fully extended position with the knee sort of flexed as you're bringing it back through. But then as you reach the leg out in front of you, you're getting a nice full stretch on that hamstring. And people often think that the hamstring strains and tears happen when the leg is being extended out of the back, but it's not. When the knee and the foot are being pulled through and you're basically reaching as far out in front of you with your foot as you can, that is when the hamstring is its most fully stretched state, and that's when you get the strains and the tears. And you can feel it. You can feel at which point in the movement you're feeling the most stretch and tension on the hip flexors and the hamstrings. I even feel it a little bit in my adductors as well. It's very simple to sort of isolate a muscle group and be like, that's where I'm feeling working. But the whole body does work as a whole. It works synergistically. Every single muscle group is probably firing in some way when you're doing full body athletic movements like sprinting and bounding. But it does help to cue in, focusing on different areas of the body, trying to focus on movement cues, I guess, rather than muscle cues. But I can definitely feel it when I do them. I definitely felt my hamstrings today after doing all these bounds. Anyway, moving on, I did some Peterson step-ups here with 60 kgs, did a few more sets than the ones I put on here. Just couldn't be asked to edit them in. Did some tibialis raises, supersetted with some straight leg calf raises. The tib raises, I wanted to mix up with how much external and internal rotation I had on my hips. So I guess you could say inversion or eversion of my feet. So I tried to set with my toes pointing inwards towards each other, and then I also tried to set with my toes pointing outwards. And I didn't really notice much difference because when you have that amount of rotation on the feet, or that eversion and inversion on the feet, I feel like you can only get the benefit of getting the sort of lateral flexion in the ankle when you're doing it single leg. When you do it with two legs, you don't get that same benefit. So that's what I noticed from doing the two legs, but it was worth the experiment, it was worth a try. Didn't take me much more effort. Straight leg calf raises went quite well today. I feel like last session I was struggling a lot more with the balance, but I'm getting better and better at the stability here, and being a bit more controlled on that eccentric phase. So overall the session pretty good. I was actually meant to do a jump session today as well. My legs just weren't feeling up to it. They were kind of feeling a little bit fried. I am jumping quite a lot at the moment. I'd say conservatively probably 3 times a week. Some weeks I'm doing 4, some weeks I'm doing 3. It's a lot of volume on the knees, but I feel like because I've worked up over the weeks to build up to that it's not causing too much problems. But hey, having a session off of jumping is never going to hurt your knees, so it's not a problem for me to take a session off. Anyway, that is pretty much it for me today, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching. and I will hopefully catch you in the next one.